Cool.
All right.
Step out and then.
Hey, Mr. Chris, how you doing, sir?
Good, Dave. Good to be back with you. It's been a little while since you and I have been on here together.
Just a little while, huh? Just
It's
a
been
little while.
It's good to be back.
Where were you last week, Chris? Tell everybody. What were you doing?
I just got back from being in Utah for a couple weeks, working
Doing
and
what?
playing. Got a little skiing in with some friends and family.
That's excellent. Then you said like the night before you were leaving, you got your beautiful snowstorm.
Yeah, we got it was like 40 to 50 degree weather while I was there, and then the night before I left, we got 14 or 16 inches. So I got in a half a day of skiing and fresh powder, and then headed back home.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm glad you got a chance to go out there and do your thing. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So we're going to now get you back to work. So we're going to talk about, driving business, but now we're talking about bigger companies. So we're going to be digging into the pains and the slings and arrows associated with large companies and their disruptive product launches, and certainly have a couple really interesting experiences there myself. But first and foremost, as you're listening, if you would like to comment, provide a thought, provide an idea, throw a question out there, please don't hesitate to do so. Put your comments in and we will respond to them. So Chris, this thing was titled Dancing with Elephants. So
I love the title for today.
Yeah, so we got an idea here that can you actually bring an elephant through an agility course?
Yes.
The hope is, yes, you better be able to, or you're going to be in big trouble. So can large companies master the process of disruptive product launches? And, from your perspective, yes, right?
Yeah. So, absolutely they can. And we have a history of not doing very well.
Yeah. So we realize now that with the pace of disruption, companies stay on the Fortune 500 for like 12 years. They used to stay on it for like 30 years. We see the fact that large companies have a very difficult time pivoting and adjusting the tidal waves. And it's the unicorns who happen to get lucky with a really cool idea, who have that myopic focus, which can shoot up, but then they also get disrupted. And we see those cycles as well. So one of the first things you talk about is a playbook. So what is going on with large companies? Why is their playbook wrong? Talk to me about that.
So why is it wrong? So fundamentally is that their culture is designed not for managing or the selling of disruptive technologies. It's an execute. They've been doing what they've been doing for so long that they have a system that works well doing that. They come from an execution mindset.
All right. So this is, hey, we want to get something done. We need to get it done. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to go do it, and we're going to scale.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, right?
What's that?
There's nothing inherently wrong with that.
In the right context, not at all. I mean, in the context of what they normally do in everyday business, where they're managing an existing product line and in a market that they know with customers that they know. No, that's the model.
And so that's the first thing I kind of want to focus in on folks here as they're listening is that, big companies can get frustrated when, folks like us consultants talk through changes and adjustments. And what we're saying here is we're not saying you're doing anything wrong as it relates to how you run your business. What we're saying is that if you really want to get into another market area, to compete. Go ahead. Or
launch a product that is a disruptive inside the existing market area.
That's right. Good point.
Different ways to disrupt, right?
Yep. That you do have to put a different hat on. You have to. It's mandatory.
You have no choice, because if you try to use the old playbook, the old framework that works for your sales team in the existing market, if you try to use that framework with a disruptive product or going into a new market that doesn't know that technology, it won't work, because it won't work. It just
and
won't
also
work.
you don't even know what you don't know yet. You don't know what you don't know.
Well, yes, right. You don't. Well, so there's a whole difference. So one is you don't know what you don't know, but then there's also the stuff that you don't know that you got to figure out as well. So there's lots of things when there's disruption. There's certain things at the product launch that you don't know yet that you got to figure out, right? But then there's a whole gamut of things, those things that you don't know about the product that you can't figure out until you actually have the product in the hands of people, both from the use of the technology, but also from the sales of how do you sell that technology until you're actually selling.
So the interesting thing here, Chris, is that we know and using the wrong playbook, it's really kind of a VP of sales, CRO, director of marketing. They have their personas, they have their processes, they have their email campaigns, they have their cold calling campaigns, and they're working together. In a lot of cases, they do work symbiotically as it relates to their current existing business, right?
Correct.
Now, where does the breakdown start occurring in Disruptive? So you get these three elements, right? You have the marketing element, you have the sales enablement element, and you have the VP of sales element, right? In these big companies, there's a lot of players. Yep. So where do you see the breakdown start happening as they start making mistakes in disruptive product launches?
So I think the breakdown fundamentally starts back at the product development side of things.
Okay.
It starts way before it ever even gets the.
All right, so you're taking even a step back and saying, hey, look at guys, in the big companies, you also have this product group over here, which may or may not connect with the CRO. Correct. All right. So what is going on in the product group that starts this fundamental breakdown?
So well, let's step back a little bit, David. Let's look about this is not just big companies, this is every company, but where do disruptive products fail? And they don't fail on the product development side, they fail on the market development side. If you look at the data, about 90% of the risk is market development risk, about 10% of the risk is product development risk, typically for products. Now for therapeutics, it's a little bit different. So that's kind of the first fundamental thing, is that the risk is on the market side. So product development, leading the development of the product is fundamentally flawed.
Okay, so if you're saying, hey, if we think we want to enter with a disruptive product,
yes,
it can't be done from the internal product standpoint. It's got to be done more from a marketing facing standpoint.
And I would even argue that it has to be done from a sales standpoint.
All right, so this is where from a big company perspective, and this is where we think a lot of the pain is. That's just, they don't even think that way at all. Zero, yeah. Not even a inkling of thought there, nor do they have any structure to really do that.
Correct.
But it's not impossible. So let's talk about that. When you say it starts on that sales side, so explain that. Dig into it a little bit more, and how does that tie into the right playbook?
So let's step back even from that. So it's a wrong playbook, and fundamentally, what's wrong with the playbook that we have today, and I see this in big companies and small companies, but is we're working from a playbook of execution. So we're executing the plan, the market development plan, the marketing plan, the product development plan. What fundamentally has to shift is when you're doing something with a disruptive product going into a market, the fundamental structure is not execution, it's discovery. We have to discover what the market, how to enter that market, how to sell into a market, how to market into that market. That has to be discovered. So that's fundamentally where you have to step back and start from. And it should start at the very beginning of product concept, and it should then drive all the way through to the sales drive. Now, why is it sales is the question you ask. And the primary thing is the sales is that sales are the people that are actually contacting the patient, the customer in the sales process. And that's where the discovery actually happens. It happens in that engagement with that customer in the sales conversation. And it happens on the first sale of that product into the marketplace, the very first one, and then it incrementally grows from there.
So if you change using the word,
it's a sales issue, not a marketing issue, not a product development issue.
But instead of using sales because in big companies they like the stovepipe things,
Yes.
Really what you're saying is you need a market-facing professional who is actively talking to potential clients about this disruptive product without
Correct.
following a prescribed, repeatable, scalable process from the old playbook.
So say
They're
that
following
again.
another process. They're following something else. So I've got these professionals. I'm not going to put sales on. We got these professionals. They're going into the customers.
Yes.
And they're talking to customers based on a preset persona that we think is going to work. Now, those are the folks that are following part of the playbook. They're following the discovery portion of the playbook, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where do these get? Where can a big company pull these people from?
So when I find them in the sales team. So and there's a great article on this. It's called the Sales Learning Curve. They actually these sales reps who are kind of your atypical sales reps that like to do this early missionary work. They're they refer to them as Renaissance reps. They're the ones that are kind of pre-wired to sort out and figure out and discover what the sales process is, and in the process figure out what the value proposition is in the sales discussion, which then leads back into what the marketing messaging is that marketing should be using to market to these folks. But it all starts from that sales up, from the actual sales in the discovery of it. And how do you find it? I mean, so typically these Renaissance reps, when I'm doing this in companies and work with companies, it's probably less than 5% of the reps out there that kind of have this mindset to do this type of work. So it's kind of, and I think the analogy I like to think about is it's the special forces of sales reps versus the infantry, your day-to-day infantry. And it's not, and again, kind of like the conversation we were having before, they're not better, they're not smarter, they're not any of that.
It's a different skill set.
It's a completely different skill set. That's the
different
point.
Perspective on the world, the different curiosity level associated with their explorers. There is an explorer persona. There is a person who has higher levels of curiosity and digging into things. Now, how does this? This is a question that's off the playbook here, not playbook but off the sheet.
Yes.
A lot of big companies would kind of think about this as business development. How does it, from your mind, how does that differ from business development, or does it not? Maybe big companies start teaching their business development people to act this way.
And it could probably fit into a bunch of different roles. Fundamentally, so David, we got to look at what we're trying to accomplish here with Agile Market Entry and from a sales perspective. So one of the things I see is that you see a lot of these type of concepts in lean startup methodology and customer discovery, in design thinking. You see a lot of these concepts, but the one place that doesn't show up in any of those things, nor does it show up in this part of the organization, the sales piece doesn't show up in any of that stuff. So no one, product management, marketing, the R&D side, the design thinking, the lean startup, the business model canvas. I mean, customer design. None of it actually takes it to the very last step, which is the sales process. And without that piece of the puzzle, you can't build a successful product line.
So that's what you're attaching. So you're saying, look, let's attach Agile Market Entry to this. But
it's
really,
kind of the missing piece of everything that we've been developing over the last 20, 30 years for managing disruptive technology, which all those things we just talked about. It's the piece that's missing that no one's filling it, that has filled that gap yet. How do you actually do the sales piece of the process? That's one piece of it. And the other thing is all those other things, the design thinking, the customer discovery, the lean, the lean startup, all that stuff would work better if it was led with this sales piece added to it and led from the sales perspective. So if your VP of marketing has a sales experience and has sales experience launches disruptive technology, they can probably do this. If your product manager has direct sales experience selling to customers and has done it multiple times with disruptive products, they can probably do this too. But that's usually not the case. They usually don't have that skill set, and that piece ends up always missing.
So what I'm hearing then is when I look at a business development person, a lot of times they're not necessarily selling; they are connecting.
Yes,
they are bringing in new opportunities, but they're not actually grabbing money. And with an Agile Market Entry salesperson, they're discovering, but they're also looking for opportunities. They are still selling.
So when I'm doing this type of work, even when I'm doing it at the very early product development stage, and when I'm doing it leading up to the product launch, I'm always working from a sales mindset, and I'm always selling.
That's where I don't think it can fit. That's where I don't think it can fit in business development in bigger companies, because the business development side is about bringing in potential opportunities and growth, not necessarily mapping to your specific customer that you're selling to. Most cases, a biz dev person will bring something in that they'll either sell to your customer, or it's something else you could sell to the customer, but they're not going to be doing that. They're going to end up passing it back to the salesperson. So the sales team.
To effectively do what we're talking about and to become successful with launching a product line, you have to have sales experience doing this. And it has to be this very specific type of sales experience, this Renaissance rep that we're talking about, that has this ability to discover, learn, come up with new ideas and figure out. And David, we haven't talked about this. You and I talk about this all the time but you got to remember that the piece that's missing for most of these products, and I talk with friends that are in big companies, I work with big companies doing this, the piece that's missing for the sales team is they don't have a repeatable sales process to hand to the sales reps to execute against.
For this team, yes, exactly. And I love, if anything, I fell in love with your process, seeing that very experience where I have a repeat and scale system. I have a marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, prospecting system set up. I know how the engine works. People are just doing it operationally. And then, hey, we want to try this. And I always watch it fall apart. I mean, all right before my eyes. Now, what about a customer facing product management type person? So here's a big company. They have a product management group that's a very customer oriented person who has done customer facing work before. What's your thoughts there?
So they can probably do some of this, but again, it's the same thing. Do they have experience selling? Do they, are they responsible for sales? Can they figure out the sales process? Can they discover the sales process? If they have that, if you have that person, if that person, that product management person has experience selling, and not just selling, but launching and selling disruptive products, then yes, there's a good chance they can do it. But most product managers don't come from that background. That's not their background. If they have it, yes, if they could possibly do it. But most of them don't come from there. And then they don't know how to fill this piece, which is the missing piece at the, it's the final, I read a book called The Final Mile, which is kind of this discovery process from a product management standpoint. But they're still missing the final yard, which is delivering it and actually closing the sale to the customer. And that's what we're talking about here.
Well, we're in the midst of it now, disrupting, we're sending a disruptive product, generative AI, into the project management world and trying to get people interested. And and it's interesting because it is going to be a different sales process. And we don't know what that sales process is. Back in 1990, really 2001, 2002, when e-learning was just starting, we were trying to convert our instructor-led into e-learning and driving that into our marketplace as a disruptive product. And it was a major disruptor. And man, we were a big company. You should have seen the chaos that ensued. So what about this concept of a tiger team? Like, I've seen folks try to do this in big companies, say, okay, we're going to tiger team this thing. What's your thought on that as it relates to that tiger team using Agile Market Entry?
So I think that's the method. I think that's how you do this in big companies without having to disrupt everything and cause chaos. And also, the biggest chaos you can create in a big company is taking a new product, a disruptive or innovative product, and just handing it to the whole sales organization.
Yeah, and you got to sell 100,000 of this.
Yeah.
Which is
what's that?
And you have to sell 100,000 of this. Oh, I've seen that.
Right. And by the way, we're just giving you the product and we're giving you some sell sheets. We haven't figured out, how to effectively sell this yet. That's on you. Most sales reps, I think I've told this story before, David, but I was doing this with a startup, with a startup company. I was out in the field with sales reps. I had one sales reps in tears with me because that's what the sales leadership had done. They had handled the product, put them out there, and didn't actually and the sales leadership didn't know how to sell the product effectively, so they couldn't tell the sales reps how to sell that product effectively.
The interesting thing, you have so much background data when you all the startups you worked with, right?
Yes.
And then you see these, VP of sales who come in from bigger companies. They try to put the repeatable sales process into this startup disruptive product, and you've seen it fall apart.
Well, they don't put the repeatable sales process. They don't have the repeatable sales process yet.
Well, they try to put one in. They try to do something that they're used to.
They try. They try to use the tools that they've used to sell products in the past. That it won't be effective with a disruptive product, and then they force that framework onto their sales organization, their sales team, but it doesn't work. So
some people call this kind of like adaptive learning too. The idea that, in disruptive product, you don't know what you don't know yet. So you have to learn to figure out what it is that you should know.
So part of it, David, is that adaptive thinking, but then that's what Agile Market Entry, it gives you a complete framework for doing this methodically. How do you build, first of all, you have to make this shit, fundamentally you have to make this shift. What we're doing isn't working, right?
Yeah, you got to have that belief. You can't do this without that belief right there.
You can't. Yeah,
if this isn't working.
And I won't work with clients that have that mentality. If they get that what they're doing, what they traditionally do for sales isn't working for a new product launch that's disruptive, first they got to agree to do that, and then they have to commit. And this is another problem. Then they have to commit that they really want to do disruptive and bring disruptive and innovative technologies into their product line. A lot of companies have decided not, by default,
it's too risky.
If they fail, they know they can't do it, or they go. So first is that,
or you buy. The biggest thing that companies do now is they just buy and let the entity operate by itself.
If they can, if they can let it be, and they
which just lasts about a year and a half or 2 years, and everybody wants to get their dirty hands in it, and then it all gets muckety muck.
Then it gets muck. I've seen companies buy technologies that were disruptive, try to bring it into their system. I mean, I have a company I worked with about 10 years ago, and I was just talking to a friend that did this. Big medical device company brought this product line. They were doing about $75, $100 million in business when they bought it. They're now doing about $20 million in business because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
and they don't know how to manage that product.
That's where 1 + 1 equals 0.7.
Other competitors have come into the market behind them and have taken up that market share because they don't know how to deal with that disruptive product inside of their sales team.
So where we're getting at here is you like this concept in a big company of the Tiger team. So if you start looking at the idea. So when you build this makeup, like what parts of the company should be in this Tiger team? Should there be somebody from marketing who's interested in listening, or should there be someone from product who comes in and adjusts the product based on what these people are saying? Should there be an executive sponsor like the VP of sales? What do you see as Tiger team? And then, of course, you got your rebels, cowboys, and folks that are the nutty ones going out there. So this team,
I think this team has to be a sales team. It has to be a small sales team. And I'm saying, a sales team of 3 to 5 people. That's it.
Okay. Good.
But they have to have reach in one of the things that is natural about the Renaissance reps, and this is one of the things that, and it's, and it happens in startup companies too, is those Renaissance reps, one of the characteristics is they'll be talking with different parts of the company because of this curiosity and them knowing that they have to try to figure this out. So they'll be engaging with marketing. They'll be engaging with product management, product development side of the house to understand the capabilities and what all that type of stuff as well to manage customer expectations.
But would it be better in the bigger company that you have an agent from each one of those and they're in that group?
Actually, the way I would design it, I would have it be a sales team, but then I'd have they'd have liaisons into the marketing side. They have liaisons into the product development side. They have to have support from VP of sales.
Because aren't they going to be talking to customers that are already owned by other salespeople?
Yes.
And that's a big one that most sales VPs can't handle.
But if you're going to do innovation, this is the thing the innovation is disruptive. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have these people are going to have some freedom to go engage with customers, go engage across the company, but as a sales organization, they can figure out what the sales model is. But so for instance, with marketing, they would engage with marketing because what they're going to learn. So marketing is going to come up with a marketing plan for launch. I can guarantee you, and this is Steve Blank, and this is, who was the heavyweight champion of the year?
It's Mike Tyson. You can have a plan to get punched in the face.
You have a plan until you get hit in the face the first time.
Yeah.
As soon as you go try to sell the first customer, you get hit in the face the first time, and what you're going to find out is your marketing plan that you had conceived before you were selling isn't the exact right marketing.
That's not a bad thing either. So this is the thing that's where the marketing team will start fighting with this group. Oh, that's not right. You're just not doing it right. No, the concept needs to be why it has the word agile in it is because this is all about iterations. It's
all about iterations, if it's truly disruptive, David, we have things we know we don't know. We have things we don't know about the customer, the market, the adoption of the technology that we have to figure out on the fly. And all that gets feedback to marketing to develop the messaging. So, this small sales team will be able to figure out what the key messaging, what the key value propositions are, what the hot points are for customers that they're selling into. You pull that information back in, you feed it back into marketing, and now you start creating tactics that are more, marketing tactics that are more targeted. The persona is going to change, the messaging is going to change. You might shift in the marketplace. You might find that the entry, where you thought the entry point in the marketplace is different than it's going to be. So all this stuff has to be fed back into marketing to iteratively refine the marketing plan. That's why it's got to be led by sales, but they've got to have support from VP of sales. They got to have support from upper level management, and they got to have interactions, particularly with marketing and product management, to be effective.
Now I'm sharing, Chris, and we're just about over time here. Yep. I love this idea. You kind of talk through the Tiger team. You talk about the elements the VP of sales is going to have to learn. You kind of get a sense of where the CRO is going to play. And so what you've kind of created here is this Agile Market Entry product launch boot camp. Let's kind of talk us through that boot camp real quick to finish this off.
So the boot camp is pretty simple. What I've designed is taking the Agile Market Entry and putting into a 3 to 4 month program to train a team from a company, from a large company, how to do this sales process from the get-go. And it's an interactive. It's sessions where we actually have some training sessions on the different stages of it. And then we also have interactions between where I work with the team on coaching through the process. The idea would be to work with existing product launch. We didn't really get into it today, but I think where the really great entry point for Agile Market Entry in a large company, which is kind of be a low risk type of play, is go in with a product that's already been launched that's struggling. And using Agile Market Entry to get it back on track, especially if they've launched the product, or either a product's been launched or a company or a technology that's been brought into the company that's struggling, like we talked about with that client I was talking about earlier. I think that's the ideal place to do this. And that's a great place to apply the Agile Market Entry boot camp on kind of rejuvenating or resetting a product launch.
This is where in times of turmoil like we're feeling right now, this is the time where you really need to invest in this, where you really need to build up the skill set so you can find new opportunities, because within turmoil is new opportunities.
Yep.
But you can't find new opportunities using the same damn darn hammer. I mean, it's just not going to work.
Honestly, with as fast as the world's changing today, if a large company doesn't have an Agile Market Entry product launch team, or a similar type of function, they're going to fall behind. They're going to fail in this world.
Yeah.
The world's changing.
Well, we're going to dig into this topic more because we're missing a lot of key elements that we don't have time to cover. I want to get into the rebels and cowboys more as it relates to the persona of the people doing the dirty work. I want to talk a little bit more about what they do, their messaging, their communication style, their call style. I want to get back into that whole VP of sales overlay scenario where they have to let the team talk to customers of other salespeople and how best to deal with that. The liaison concept is fantastic, knowing that there has to be people going in and understanding what's going on, because for others on the outside, it's going to be very confusing. And I've seen that. It's like, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? We're wasting time. This is no value, but we got to go back and sell the stuff we have. Oh God, I've heard that way too many times.
And I think we should talk about, that's the other topic we should talk about. I think we should talk about the missed opportunity of not doing disruptive technology and staying with what we know how to sell. Because first of all, the world's not standing still. The second is, if you're in a very competitive market with your existing products, the only way to really break into competitive strongholds is with disruptive technology. Solving a problem the market wants to solve that's not being solved today. You can't do that with the existing technology. It doesn't happen. You have to bring something disruptive in to do that. And that's why I work with startups. That's why I've spent most of my career in startups, because of that mentality of, we're going to go in and change the world with our clients and solve problems that they truly want to solve, but they can't solve today with the disruptive technology. That can have an impact across the whole company. That can lift up the whole company. I think that's what's really missing for these large companies. And if they create this type of team inside the company, it becomes a truly competitive differentiator.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can do both. You can once it wins, you scale and repeat it. You process. You don't have to do acquisition. You basically are doing all the work without having to do all the pain. Well, we run out of time here, Big Dog. Any last points before we end our stream today?
No, I think it was a great discussion. I love this. You and I are going to phase, and we're going to focus on larger companies for a good part of this year. I think this is the shift that I'm making. So
where it's most needed. Yeah, you do some wonderful work with startups, but my God, the big companies need this desperately. And this is Durgan, and the data's there. They don't stay in the Fortune 500. They can't last. They get decimated. So anyway, they do think.
And I think that and the evidence is there from startups that we can disrupt and really make an impact on the world. And there's no reason why big companies shouldn't be doing that type of disruption that smaller companies are doing.
All right, man. Chris, thank you so much.